finishes off in style. A magnificent strike into the crowd. India lift the World Cup after 28 years.
Final week of the IPL 2020 as four teams remain standing. Four teams packing their bags and going home. One team into the final. Defending champions Mumbai Indians, as we record this podcast, already having one hand on the trophy for the fifth time. Will it happen? Will it not happen? All that and much more on this latest episode of HotSpot, the cricket podcast. Hello and welcome everyone. As always, I am your host, sports journalist and broadcaster Chetan Narula, and with me Bharat Sundaresan once again with his main flowing, joining all the way from Adelaide, Cricbuzz's international cricketing reporter. Bharat, first thoughts on Mumbai versus Delhi Capitals, the first qualifier for the final. Mumbai had it pretty easy. Almost seemed like it was not the team that had been rested for a few days, not the team that lost by 10 wickets to Sunrisers Hyderabad in that final league match.
Chetan, not firstly, thank you for having me on again, but not keeping up with the program of the world, did they? I mean, we are in a world suddenly where even the most obvious things seem to take forever to get decided. We still don't know who the next US president is. So I thought it'll be that kind of battle where it'll go till the end, the last overs maybe, and then who knows, we've seen enough super overs this time around. So that's how evenly placed they looked at one point. So before the game began. But then, what we expected would happen in the election is what has happened in the IPL the qualifier. And Mumbai Indians, I guess, and we've spoken about this before, one of the best T20 teams ever to play this format, have gone through to yet another final.
Well, we're waiting to see if there are any super overs in the US presidential race with Joe Biden already leading the incumbent Donald Trump. And, the world is waiting and watching as to see what is the result. Again, like I said, as we record this podcast, the results of the US presidential race still not out. But, of course, the one result that is out is Mumbai Indians beating Delhi Capitals by a 50-odd run margin and storming into their sixth ever final. They have a good conversion rate, Bharat. You look at Chennai Super Kings, they've won 3 out of 8 finals. They've been in 8 finals. Twice they were not part of the tournament, but apart from that, they've been runner-ups on 5 occasions, 3 of them to Mumbai Indians, in fact. So they are a team which has converted 3 of their 8 finals. Mumbai Indians, they have been in 5 finals before this one. They've converted it 4 times. And now, who's going to bet against them not converting it for a 5th time?
Yeah, I mean, whatever happens in the next 2 games, if Mumbai don't win this IPL season, it'll be a big surprise. And purely because they just look that damn good. Like, we spoke about how they were the complete team. Most of their players are at the peak of their powers. But what we've seen in this season is they just seem to be getting better and better with each week. Like whether it's Quinton de Kock, whether it's Surya Kumar Yadav, or Sky, as he seems to be called these days, whether it's their bowling. And look, they got to a big total without Pollard and without Rohit Sharma, their mainstays or long-standing mainstays even getting off the mark. So it just tells you that they have answers for everything. And which, I mean, I was thinking about it, Chetan, like, is there any other T20 team, even in international cricket, I mean, a T20I team, who are as complete as this Mumbai Indians setup right now? I can't think of any, to be honest, who have from 1 to 11, you have match winners. That's how good they are.
Interesting thought there, Bharat, because you just look at this Mumbai lineup, and very good point that you mentioned that both Pollard and Rohit Sharma, they did not contribute anything. And even then, they got to 200 runs in almost a canter. You had Quinton de Kock and Surya Kumar Yadav, continuing from their form of the season. But for me, the standout batsman for Mumbai Indians has been Ishin Kishan. We've spoken about him in the past episodes as well. To me, he's not even played all matches. He's already their highest run getter with 1 game to play. And, there is something about him which, when I say there's something about him, it's it's more to do with the confidence in his ability at the crease, the maturity that he's showing. And you just expect that, okay, while he's at the crease, sure, Rohit got out, Quinton de Kock got out after a good start, Surya Kumar Yadav got out after a good start. But while he was at the crease, there was this assurance that Mumbai Indians haven't lost this match yet, or not lost this match, at least they're not out of the game just yet. So that was something that was really, really nice about Ishin Kishan, his innings, really. And to me, it feels that, he's just one tournament away. Another 6 months' time, we have another IPL. I think he's one tournament away. And of course, our listeners and viewers should also be reminded that he's also a wicketkeeper batsman from the state of Jharkhand. And, he's somebody who's well suited to continue the legacy of MS Dhoni. Not heaping pressure on the youngster, but again, I think he's one tournament away from heaping pressure on the likes of Sanju Samson and Rishabh Pant. Both of them on the fringes of the Indian team now, not part of the Indian team, but on the fringes, because KL Rahul needs a second wicketkeeper batsman. Competition is growing. But to answer your question, Bharat, I don't think, to be honest, I agree with you. I don't think there is any international T20 side like this. It's almost a machinery, an unstoppable juggernaut that Mumbai Indians are. But at the same time, the issue with comparing it with T20 sides internationally is they don't spend as much time together. They don't play as much cricket together. Yes, Mumbai Indians are together only for 14 matches, but they know what they're doing. Well gelled, well oiled. The machinery just keeps on churning, victories, rolling. You look at the international cricket sides in T20 arena, they're all putting parts together, rebuilding. So perhaps that could be the reason. Now we have 2 T20 World Cups. So maybe we'll see something like that. What do you think?
Yeah, and like Australia, for example, have always been very format focused. Like if it's an Ashes coming up or an India series coming up, you've seen the likes of Stark and Cummins, and even to at times Smith and Warner being rested from the T20Is and them playing more red ball cricket, or at least just resting. But yes, of course, we saw all of them come back. Even Josh Hazel would come back with the whole belief that there would have been a T20 World Cup. I guess the T20 World Cup would have been coming to an end if, in a normal world. We can't talk about a normal world anymore. So yeah, that's a good point. So most T20I teams, especially the high performing test teams, are always trying to figure out a way to balance their test form, or and also the fitness of their test players, the test regulars. And just one point about Ishan Kishan before we move on, and this might sound like a controversial point, but I know it'll put a smile on your face. I think Ishan Kishan is proving to be what everybody thought Rishabh Pant would be. It's still very, very, very early days. It's very early days. And if you look at their history, Rishabh Pant was the star of a T20 World Cup and Ishan Kishan was captain. And we've seen in the past with Indian under-19 World Cup teams, Ashok Mineria also comes to mind, guys who've gone there as captains, not quite fulfilling their potential that you would think of what we've seen with the Virat Kohli. Unmukh Chand, another great example.
Yeah.
But Ishan Kishan seems to be debunking that myth. And who knows, maybe in a year's time, he would be where Rishabh Pant is today.
Exactly. And that's what I alluded to. There's another tournament, and within 6 months' time in the IPL, there's a determination about Ishan Kishan. I think, just to round up your point there's a determination about Ishan Kishan that he wants to break through that ceiling. He's taking a bit of time with it. And to me, it just seems like, I'm not going to say he's a better batsman than Rishabh Pant. No, that's you can't make that judgment at this point in time. But I'm just going to say that his game feels a bit, a little more, all-rounded at the moment. Maybe it's because of the kind of form he's in, maybe the kind of form that Rishabh Pant is not in. So, these are small things that do affect the confidence and the form or the flow of batting for any particular batsman. So perhaps it's also, impressing upon our minds how we are seeing Ishan Kishan and how we are seeing Rishabh Pant. But I think this is a debate which is going to get prolonged as time passes on over the next 6 to 8 months. So interesting times for anybody who wants to be the second, wicket keeper batsman in the Indian team after KL Rahul. We'll move on from Mumbai DC. We'll talk about the 4 teams that have been knocked out. First of all, we'll talk about the teams that are now part of the knockouts: Mumbai Indians, Delhi Capitals, Sunrisers Hyderabad, and Royal Challengers Bangalore. Once again, Bharat Sundaresan knocking it out of the park, getting his getting his picks right. I had thought, maybe Delhi Capitals will fall out of the pack. They almost did. They almost did. It was really a one-sided affair throughout the weekend, the last round of matches. But let's talk about the 4 teams first, which have fallen out, and let's just close the book on them in today's episode. What they did well, what they did wrong. Let's talk about Chennai Super Kings first, or Rajasthan Royals first. In fact, they finished last. Started off well with 2 victories in Sharjah, but just fell out of the sky after that. Ended up with 12 points. Joint 12 points with Kings 11 Punjab and Chennai Super Kings, but because of the run rate, last in the points table. What do they need to change for next year?
Yeah, you look at the team, they have some of the biggest names in T20 cricket or international cricket, like Joss Buttler, Ben Stokes, Jofra Archer, and
Steve Smith, another big name, Steve Smith.
Names, but I know big international cricket, but I still don't count him as a big T20 name. In my book, he's still he might soon hit Steve Smith. You can't rule him out from suddenly just transforming his T20 game. But I think it was a season where they really won games which nobody thought they would. So at many levels, they had to depend on a miracle from Rahul Tewatia, who's been, of course, the find of the tournament. In many ways, he did it whenever he could pull something off. Or of course, we expected Ben Stokes to do something special. He made that 100, and they won that game. But it like we've spoken about it in the past as well. They never look settled, but that's been the case with Rajasthan Royals from the beginning, from the time the IPL came into being. They're always a team in motion. There are changes in the batting order, the batting lineup's always up and down. Joss Butler's opening, Ben Stokes is opening, then Joss Butler's down the order, Steve Smith's opening. It's Sanju Samson's up, Sanju Samson's down. It's a team which has always been in motion. So, which I guess, whenever that settles down is when you would think they'll start doing more consistently, which is what we've seen in T20 cricket around the world. We spoke about Mumbai Indians. What they are is a settled team. And again, on Ishin Kishan, it helps that he plays for a team which is so settled. That there is that confidence in that dressing room when you know your role. So, but it's just been the case of Rajasthan Royals for so many years now. And I guess if they continue playing the same way or sticking to the same game plan, it will continue being, or what we'll continue seeing is them pulling off these miraculous wins. They'll always be part of the highlight reel, but never hang around long enough to be part of the big moments. So it was just a case of same old for them.
In the preview show with Akash Chopra and Devdas Gupta, I had actually put Rajasthan Royals as my dark horses. And the reason for that was, and I'm way off the mark because they finished last, but when you see not that way off the mark as well, because they're just 2 points off qualification. Because of run rate, they are finishing 8th. They started with a bang. But my logic was, you look at the stars they have: Jofra Archer, Ben Stokes, Joss Butler, David Miller, Steve Smith, and you have Sanju Samson, who I thought was priming himself for a breakthrough season. But again, it was the same old, like you said. There's a bit of a comfort feeling there that, you can just keep on repeating performances every year and nothing's going to change. And I think Sanju Samson is the quintessential Rajasthan player in that mold, because 2 innings every year and then bad run of form. He had that 150 before the selection meeting that we had discussed. And then again, nothing. So it doesn't, he's 25, 26 now, Sanju Samson. He should be pushing ahead that team. You look at somebody like KL Rahul, who's pushing ahead in terms of his batting. He's now, the whole of Kings 11 Punjab is revolving around him. It just feels like he had outgrown Royal Challengers Bangalore. KL Rahul, so he had to move out, and not had to. It just transpired that he moved out. They could not have so many big players in just one team. So now you have an entire team revolving around KL Rahul, and I thought Sanju Samson could probably take that step up. Maybe not in first class cricket, maybe not in list A, maybe in T20 cricket, but it hasn't happened. And the standing problem for Rajasthan Royals will be because they don't have that talismanic Indian figurehead, especially in batting. You cannot take captaincy off an overseas player. I mean, if you take off captaincy off Steve Smith, who are you going to make captain? There's no Indian name there. There's no Indian name there. No senior Indian name there. Sanju Samson, like Shreyas Iyer, the way Shreyas Iyer has developed, if Samson had achieved that potential or that limit, maybe you could have made Samson captain, but I don't think that can happen. So if you take captaincy of Steve Smith, you make Joss Butler captain or or Ben Stokes captain. So it's like you mentioned, a never-ending cycle for Rajasthan Royals, and maybe they want to relook things. Maybe they're waiting for a mega auctions and try and re-strategize. I know another team which will be looking for a mega auction. It is Chennai Super Kings. Everybody knows what has gone wrong with them. It just never started to come together. Even when it was going wrong, Chennai were always aside, finishing 7th after a late flurry of forms. I think Ruturaj Gaikwad should have the nickname Sparky. For the spark, he's shown 3 back-to-back half centuries, got them to 12 points. Did not finish with wooden spoon, but Shane Watson also gone now from the scene. Likes of Raidu, Faf, Dhoni, they're going to get a year older. They're not going to get younger. Dwayne Bravo, Imran Tahir. Chennai need a mega auction. We don't know if it's going to happen, but Chennai need a mega auction.
Yeah, they need a mega auction, but will they take it? I mean, and what I mean by that is, like, they have shown over the years that, I don't know, in a very strange way. I might be putting myself out there here. I can relate to how they are. It's a very Tamil Mama team. Like, they don't change. Like, it's a team that will back themselves and back their principles, back their ideas to the hill. So even if there is a mega auction, there's been a lot of talk about, yes, they'll go for wholesale changes. I don't see that, Chetan. I almost look at one thing is going to happen. Sam Curran is there. I mean, he's going to wear that yellow for the next 10 years. They're never going to let go of him. And
if I can interject here, if I can interject here, I think he's going to be primed for the Dwayne Bravo role in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. He might, and from what we've seen, he could be better than Dwayne Bravo. Like, he's got so much time, and he will play a lot of international cricket, so he'll only keep getting better and better. So when you just look, see, Shane Watson's already moved on. Maybe Murli Vijay, those guys might, Kedar Jadhav, likes of those guys, maybe their time has run out. You never know. But I still don't see them changing their core, which is still Faf du Plessis, MS Dhoni, Suresh Raina might come back, Imran Tahir, Dwayne Bravo, Deepak Chahar, Shardul Thakur. I don't see them really making wholesale changes. Maybe, yes, they look for Ravindra Jadeja, of course. Maybe they look for a couple of players here and there. But now that they've found a Ruturaj Gaikwad, now that Sam Curran seems to, it's just a matter of time before he starts saying, he already has a name, so a Tamil name. It's just a matter of time before he starts saying whistle podu and starts speaking in Tamil. So it's just a question of that's their new core. So I still don't expect them to make wholesale changes. And we said in our last episode, a team which is knocked out they're in a great position, but they are the most dangerous team. And they did exactly what we expected them to do, which is beat Calcutta, beat Punjab, and drag those two teams down with them. So a great finish for Chennai looking into the next season, which is 4 or 5 months away.
Well, they still have a lot of blanks to fill. When the names that you took who might move on, the likes of Kedar Jadhav, Murli Vijay, Shane Watson. So they need that auction, whether it's a mega auction or whether it's a regular auction. They need something to fill those gaps in, because if there is no auction, then it becomes a bit problematic, because then you have just the transfer window to try and pull players that are perhaps not needed. Somebody like an Ajinkya Rahane from Delhi Capitals, although
Yeah.
Ajinkya Rahane is finding a bit of form, finding a bit of run of matches together for Delhi Capitals. There are a lot of players. There are a lot of fringe players. You look at, some players who haven't played at all, throughout
Yeah. Yeah.
throughout the innings, not the innings, throughout the tournament. Really, you look at Aditya Tare. He's not played for
Yeah.
Mumbai at all, at all.
Yeah.
So there are different players who haven't played, who haven't been utilized the way they could have been utilized by their franchisees. And Chennai Super Kings will always look at who is the new superstar in the international cricket arena, or just get some players and attract some players. They have a lot of money to play around with, because they have a lot of large amount of the purse remaining to spend on salary. So it'll be interesting. I think the next 5 to 6 months will be very interesting to see how Chennai, whether there's an auction happening or not happening, it'll be interesting to see how Chennai go about that rebuild. We'll talk about Kings 11 Punjab in just a bit. We'll talk about Kolkata Knight Riders first. They finished fifth with 14 points, just edged out on a run rate, thanks to Mumbai Indians resting some key players. But do you see Evan Morgan leading them next season from the start? And what sort of changes do you think they need to make? What went wrong for them this time around?
Yeah, I guess that Dinesh Karthik's form with the bat was a huge hole for them. Of course, we spoke about the change in captaincy and Owen Morgan coming in and scoring runs. He actually got very consistent once he became captain.
Yeah.
Andre Russell didn't have the kind of course, impact that he generally does with that team. Who knows how long he's going to stick around with them? So Andre Russell moving to Chennai Super Kings, who knows? I mean, you can't rule anything out. But again, similar to Rajasthan Royals, similar to Chennai Super Kings, you are looking at that core suddenly not looking the same, right? For the longest time, they've had Sunil Narayan, Andre Russell, and Dinesh Karthik. There was a time they had Robin Uthappa as well. But these three and like a bunch of young fast bowlers has been their core. So you still think the bowling has enough depth for them not to worry about too much, like Shivam Mavi or Kamlesh Nagarkoti. We've seen some other young faces as well. And of course, Varun Chakravarti is now in the Indian team. We spoke about him last time. He's been a revelation. So the bowling doesn't seem a concern. But that batting, yes, you have Shubman Gill at the top of the order. Do they just go with youth? I still think Owen Morgan will continue leading the next season. But you spoke about how, and you spoke beautifully about how the problem with Rajasthan Royals is not having the one Indian player who's taken their team to the next level, which KL Rahul has, even though they haven't made the playoffs. So Shubman Gill might be that guy in a couple of years' time. So there are some, but maybe it's time they look beyond Sunil Narayan. Dinesh Karthik has been captain, now he's not captain. He's had a pretty forgettable season. Yeah, he pulled off a couple of blinders. He had a couple of innings here and there, but nothing of note. And especially when your team hasn't made it through to the playoffs. Maybe some changes there, because that middle order still looks very. It doesn't seem like, you compare that to Mumbai Indians. Like, you just expect, if this guy doesn't do it, if Krunal Pandya doesn't score for you, there's always Hardik. If Hardik doesn't do it for you, there's always Pollard, and there's always Ishin Kishan, which you don't like. That Kolkata middle order doesn't fill you up with that kind of confidence. So I expect they also need an auction more than anything.
Yeah, I think you spoke rightly there. I think two names that really stand out, of course, one is Andre Russell, and the other name I think is Sunil Narayan. I think not much has been spoken about him. There's been a lot of this whole bowling action thing surrounding him. It starts impacting not just the team, but not the player himself. Let's be honest, Sunil Narayan is not the same Sunil Narayan when he first came onto the IPL scene. First 3-4 years, he was unplayable. You look at that time when Gautam Gambhir was leading the Kolkata Knight Riders, and they had 2 trophies in 3-4 years, and that was the time Sunil Narayan was unplayable. Yes, they were playing at Eden Gardens, 7 matches there, whatever. I mean, he was unplayable. Even with his correct bowling action right now. Sunil Narayan doesn't have that impact. What impact does it have on the team is you have somebody like Kuldeep Yadav who comes into the season saying, this is going to be my season, this is going to be my season. Kuldeep Yadav has the chutzpah of a fast bowler, but he doesn't have the figures to back up that chutzpah. Even as a unorthodox leg spinner, those wickets haven't come, those statistics haven't come, and you have somebody like Varun Chakravarti and you have a battery of pace bowlers. So your bowling attack becomes really imbalanced if you're playing both Varun Chakravarti and your Kuldeep Yadav and your pacers, and then you have to fit in Pat Cummins as well and Andre Russell as well and Sunil Narayan as well. So my problem with Kolkata Knight Riders was, yes, you have Shubman Gill at the top, you have Nitish Rana at number 3, and the rest, nobody knows what was going on every time. It was like you mentioned, yes, with Rajasthan Royals, they were changing. By the time Evan Morgan came, they started having some consistency. I think it was a bit too late. Yes, they need an auction, but they need an auction from a different perspective, perhaps, Bharat, because I feel, every team tries to get that core together. Kolkata Knight Riders have that core in place. They have Varun Chakravarti, Kuldeep Yadav. They have the 3 Indian young pacers. They have Nitish Rana and Shubman Gill. This is their core. Now they need players to fill the gaps around them. They need some experienced hands. Like you mentioned, Evan Morgan probably going to lead them for the next 2 seasons and then hand it over to Shubman Gill because he's probably going to have that step up, just like somebody like KL Rahul. But they need auctions perhaps to release players. Release Dinesh Karthik, release Sunil Narayan, release, maybe Pat Cummins also you can release, because I thought he's had an indifferent tournament, not worth 15.5 crores. It'll be interesting if they retained Pat Cummins, because his presence, a bit imbalanced in the lower order. You have to play somebody who you've paid 15.5 crores for. So I think these were the issues with Kolkata Knight Riders, and rightly put, they will be looking forward to an auction. It seems like an auction is going to happen, not a mega auction, a regular auction where a lot of teams release players. You have some new players, somebody like a Mitchell Marsh who was injured. He might come back. Mitchell Stark might play because, the IPL happens on the normal time and there's a T20 World Cup coming up. So you never know how players come in and how they fit in different platforms. And of course, you've had Caribbean Premier League. You've seen it. You'll have probably another season of the PSL. You never know how things are going to shape up. When I say PSL, I'm not referring to the Pakistan players, but the overseas players who are playing. And somebody like a Shakib-ul Hasan, he'll be back. Shakib-ul Hasan, he'll be back. He'll be entering the mega auction. You have some other Bangladeshi players who might be entering the auction as well. So it'll be interesting. We hope another auction happens, and with that hope, let's take a look at the last team which will be knocked out, Kings 11 Punjab, the Universe Boss. The Universe Boss was the catalyst for them. They found their balance later in the year. What did you make of their season, Bharat?
Yeah, I guess they had they had a season which really summed up 2020 as a year, right? I mean, you went from them being at the bottom of the table and giving up hope, and you thought that this is it, this year is never going to get better at all. And then there was that whole feeling of oh no, they've risen like a phoenix once Chris Gale started playing for them and started scoring consistently. Because think about it, right? Initially, everybody was cool. KL Rahul was making hundreds, Mayank Agarwal was making hundreds, runs were being scored, wickets were being taken, but they just couldn't get over the line. And then came that phase where they rose to number 4, and it looked like maybe, like we did with 2020 as a year, that maybe we've seen the back of the virus, it's all left behind. And then came the second wave. So it's just one of those seasons really where they could easily have finished in the top 2 if those early results had gone their way. But, there is a lesson in there for every team. You can't bungle up games that you have to win at the start and then just hope that you hit
you can't play catch up. You can't play catch up in a tournament like this. Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. Exactly. Great point there, Bharat. But I think what they also missed was somebody to support somebody like Mohammad Shami. I thought Ravi Bishnoi was really impressive. You look at somebody like Varun Chakravarti. I thought Ravi Bishnoi was equally
Yes.
impressive, probably younger in his years. And that's why, the selectors probably thought, okay, maybe another season or so, just let's see. It would have been interesting for somebody like Ishin Kishan to play first class this year, or Ravi Bishnoi to play first class cricket this year. Hopefully, it'll still happen in January. But I think they missed some bowling firepower. They did not have that. Apart from Shami, they did not have the enforcer in their bowling attack. Yes, you have Chris Jordan. He's a good bowler in the depth, but James Neesham, he's a utility cricketer. No disrespect. I'm sure if he listens to this podcast, probably will
Tweet
tweet
about
again,
you.
tweet about me tomorrow. Like what the hell do you know? But again, no disrespect. He's a utility cricketer. Hasn't
Yeah.
you can't say, okay, this guy is going to play 12 matches out of 14 for you and going to win 2 matches. That's not going to
Yeah.
happen. That hasn't happened. So I think they need to find a better balance with their top order. It can't just be KL Rahul and Gail and Agarwal and Nicholas Puran winning you matches and Deepak Huda carrying you over the finish line. Just can't play an entire season like that, can they?
Yeah, and like you're so right about the strike bowling. The little I saw of them, like like the full games I saw, they just didn't seem to. Initially, they had Sheldon Cottrell taking some wickets for them with the new ball, but then he kind of faded away, and then they just did not. They weren't taking wickets early on. They weren't striking early on. And like with the teams that have done well, whether it's Mumbai with their stellar new ball attack or like wicket taking attack, they just didn't seem to have that wicket taking attack. Like we said, Shami was didn't have anyone complimenting him except Ravi Bishnoi, but by the time Ravi Bishnoi would come in, some batsman or the other seemed to be set. And of course, early on, that Rahul Tewatia game really like ruined their the early part of their campaign, because
Yeah.
they used to be like kind of going great guns at that point. So yeah, for them, unlike Calcutta, it's the bowling that they need to have a look at, because I still think with Agarwal and KL Rahul on top and Chris Gale seemingly ageless now in the IPL. Like after this season, he's going to play at least 3 more years.
There is no way he does not play the first game next year. There is no way. He
Exactly.
has to. He'll be at number 3. He'll definitely play.
Yeah. I mean, no more like scenes of him just sitting with the towel in the dressing room, which we complained about here in the season. So, and with Chris Gale and Nicholas Puran has had a great season. He's come into his own.
Yeah.
Like there was so much hype around him. I was on some West Indian, no, not some. I was on a West Indian radio show the other day. Still so much talk about Nicholas Puran, why he's the whole debate was about him. I had to say something so that people stopped speaking about Puran and something else. So yes, it's been that season that he's proved himself. So I think for them, the batting core seems to be stabilized. Deepak Huda, I think, is a very underrated T20 cricketer. But it's the bowling. Yeah, I mean, they need. Okay, now we have Shami and Bishnoi. Maybe another season of Cottrell. Maybe they can do with a couple of foreign bowlers. Because with the batting so strong, like the Indian batting depth so strong there, and Gale and Pura there, if they can find 2 maybe slightly higher quality bowlers, if that's all they need then to make the playoffs first, and then maybe he would win.
We'll move on quickly, and we'll not be talking about the remaining 4 teams this week. We'll be talking about them next week because they're still in competition, but we will be talking about their matchups as we sit down to record. We have Sunrisers Hyderabad and Royal Challengers Bangalore this evening. And when we say it's Friday evening, and I'm hoping Bharat will stay up and watch the game. But Bharat, what do you make of this matchup? What do you make of the remaining matchups? In fact, in this IPL, the knockouts, who do you think are the favorites primed to meet Mumbai Indians in the finals? How do you see this panning out?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like the Sunrisers and RCB, the last time they met in a playoff was the final of 2016, right? When Ben Cutting stole the game away in those last few overs, and somehow RCB just couldn't catch up. So Sunrisers are the team with the momentum. RCB were the team with the momentum, and then like Delhi have had a couple of stutters here and there. But I still think it is. I've been backing RCB from the start. I don't know. It's just something about them. Like maybe the time has come finally for Virat Kohli to break the hoodoo. And, look, great things happen to people when they're about to become parents, and
Yeah.
definitely after they become parents. Maybe that there it is. Like, the IPL title first, and then he becomes a father for the first time. So it just looks like, and who knows, maybe an Australian series win as well.
That'll be some.
I think RCB just, like I said, Virat Kohli, everything seems to be. It seems to be his year in this mind. It's just a gut feeling. So Sunrisers have come from nowhere. Nobody really gave them a chance to make it to the playoffs some time back. But David Warner is that kind of captain. I think I know Australian cricket has ruled him out as ever leading the national team, but it's a pity because he is quite not just in terms of being inspirational with his own performances, but even strategy-wise, you just observe him on the field. He is a very strategic captain. So that's a pity, but it's always good to see him captaining in the IPL. But I just think this is RCB's season. So and Delhi seem to have lost momentum, not just in the game last night, but towards the second half of their season. They just don't seem the top order. Yes, Shikhar Dhawan has got a couple of hundreds, but Shaw and Pant have been issues throughout. And they've started depending a lot on Marcus Stoinis in the middle to late order to deliver. So with Delhi slightly floundering, I just see Bangalore beating Sunrisers today and Delhi. Kohli versus Rohit all over again.
Well, for me, man on man, I think RCB are a better rounded team this year when you compare with Sunrisers Hyderabad. But for me, the issue is that Royal Challengers Bangalore have to play too many matches to lift this tournament. If they were in Mumbai's position, win 2 matches and get the trophy, I would have probably backed them. But 3 matches is too many for Royal Challengers Bangalore to not make silly mistakes. For me, that is the problem. That is a core problem. And it's in a way, it is a commentary on Virat Kohli's captaincy, if you want to put it like that. That the brilliant batsman, probably at the peak of his captaincy powers as well, but he, tinkers a lot, makes too many changes. Just stay with it. Just stay with it. My issue with his captaincy has always been just stay with one decision for not too long. Just stay for 2 matches, 3 matches. What I want to see from RCB in this stage is consistency, not make any foolish choices. Yes, it's not to say that pick the same 11 and play all 3 matches with the same 11. No, that's not what I'm saying. Just don't make any stupid errors like send AB de Villiers at number 6 when he should be batting at number 4, potentially number 3. Or you know what I'm talking about. You know what RCB does. RCB should not do anything RCB like in these 3 matches, and maybe they might have a shot at it. But again, it's too long a route for them, because beat Sunrisers Hyderabad, beat Delhi Capitals, then you still have to beat Mumbai Indians. How do you beat Mumbai Indians? So who faces Delhi Capitals? Let's prediction time. Who faces Delhi Capitals, and then who faces Mumbai Indians, and who lifts the trophy? I think you've already said who lifts the trophy.
Yeah. I think I just though Mumbai at this point just look like an unbeatable side, honestly. And we haven't even spoken about Hardik Pandya and just his hitting prowess. Like, we can leave it for the final because you still think he's going to do something. And it's almost a good sign that he isn't bowling from an Indian perspective, because you don't want him bowling and breaking down, because whenever he has bowled, he has broken down.
He's an unnatural bowler.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a bowling action that seems to affect his body. So maybe it's not a bad thing that he's not bowling. And if he's batting and contributing, so you would still pick him any day. So I still think, this is no cricketing logic that I'm using. I just have a feeling that RCB is going to go through. And the fact that Virat Kohli has not had a great IPL from a batting point of view. And we've seen in the past, he has great seasons, with the in the league phase, but then somehow just doesn't manage to even in that final 2016. So maybe it's going to be the other way around now, and he's going to, who knows, make 300s in the next 3 matches, but he'll need to score 100 if they have to beat Mumbai. I don't know. They might get away with others like, Devdutt Padikkal has been so consistent. They might get away without him doing anything major in the first 2 games, but against Mumbai, he'll have to make 100.
So your predictions are RCB to beat Sunrisers Hyderabad, RCB to beat Delhi Capitals, and potentially RCB to beat Mumbai Indians. That's what Bharat Sundaresan says, and we're putting him on the spot. Let me tell you, Bharat, Twitter will go crazy if this comes true. There's always a lot of Rohit Sharma versus Virat Kohli on Twitter, or Rohitians versus Viratians on Twitter, as they're called. So it's going to be a crazy next few days if that comes to transpire. I think, time for my prediction, I think RCB have it in them to beat beat Sunrisers Hyderabad. I am not sure if they have it in them to beat Delhi Capitals, but I'm also not sure if Delhi Capitals can beat Mumbai Indians. They've tried 3 times. They've failed miserably 3 times. So yeah, RCB to beat Sunrisers, RCB to beat Delhi Capitals, and then maybe lose to Mumbai Indians. Although I have this gut feeling that says Sunrisers Hyderabad to go all the way to the final. And probably, if there is one team that can beat Mumbai Indians, I think Sunrisers Hyderabad can. They have this element of surprise about them, because you look at Delhi Capitals and RCB and you say, okay, you see those big name players and everything. Sunrisers Hyderabad are relying on a lot of Indian fringe players, a lot of young Indian players. Yes, they have big players, Warner, Williamson, Jason Holder, Besto, who's not even playing anymore, Rashid Khan, who's there. They're depending on them, but they're also depending on the likes of Manish Pandey and Shahbaz Nadeem and Natarajan and Thampi and Sandeep Sharma. For them to beat all of these teams and lift the trophy, that would be something. So I just have this gut feeling of Sunrisers Hyderabad going all the way to the final and giving Mumbai Indians a run for their money. Let's see what really transpires over the next 4-5 days. Before we finish off this episode, we do have to talk about the Women's T20 Challenge. First of all, we'll hear once again from Jemimah Rodrigues. She was on the show. She graced HotSpot with her presence, and she had, different opinions about Women's T20 Challenge, taking place side by side along with the Big Bash. And let's just hear from her once again.
There were plans this year that, we would have a proper women's IPL of maybe a 4 or 5 team. But because of the lockdown and everything, all the plans changed. So yeah, actually we are really excited also that, that finally we are getting some cricket, and even we'll have the women's IPL, maybe a small tournament, but it's going to mean so much to all of us. And each one of us, we are going to get to play some good quality cricket. And you never know, you can get a new talent coming up from the WIPL, and that's going to help, because even if you see the men's IPL, there are so many people like Jasprit Bumrah, Hardik Pandya, so many people, we found talent we never knew. And I don't think if it wasn't for the IPL would we ever get to know such talent. And now they are the mainstays of India. So I think it's the same that's going to happen in women's.
Right. So that was Jemimah Rodrigues. And she is participating in this tournament. There are 3 teams: the Supernovas, Trailblazers, and Velocity. First of all, Bharat, what do you make of this tournament? A lot of chatter. We've had 2 matches. One has been very, very low scoring. What do you make of this? Do you think it's time for this tournament to become bigger than it is?
I think we've reached that point, in my opinion. I remember being there in Mumbai when was it, 3 or 4 years ago, when they played a single game. It started off as a single game. It was almost it was more than an exhibition game, but it was almost a trial game just to see how much interest is developed. But the problem was it was a 3 p.m. game where on a weekday as well. So it was put together on the same day as a playoff match, or one of the either a qualifier or an eliminator, I don't remember. So the thing was, on a weekday, you hardly got anyone at the Wankhede Stadium, and there were a lot of people who wondered, the BCCI, do they even have the heart in the right place with regards to women's T20 cricket? But it's good to see that it's expanded since. This is the third year that we're having the Women's T20 Challenge, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, I mean, we've seen 2 matches already. Yes, the game yesterday was a low-scoring game, but we saw outstanding bowling from Sophie Eccleston, and whose profile you guys should go and read on Cricbuzz. Rob Johnson, my colleague, has written a beautiful piece on her.
Plug in.
Always plugging. Yeah, so it's look, and the WBBL has been going on at the same time. The only pity is that, and I hear that a lot about it in Australian cricket circles, that if only they hadn't clashed, like Jemima spoke about it as well, we would have seen a lot of Australian talent there as well, and the Australian players would have loved being there. They loved being part of.
And they were there last time around. Yeah, they've been there last time around. Yeah. And which brings us to the point that, okay, the timing wasn't there, and the BCCI is caught between a rock and a hard place this time around. You can't not have the women's challenger because you're having the men's IPL. They can't just say, okay, because it's clashing with the Big Bash, so we're not going to have it, because then everybody would jump on the BCCI's case and say you don't care about women's cricket, all that jazz. And then when they do have it, then why you're having it when it's clashing with the Big Bash league. So perhaps they are not ready, or at least this year, because of the pandemic, they were not ready to go full scale. Not ready to go full blown with the women's IPL. I'm not saying they'll have probably 8 teams. We discussed with Deep and Akash earlier as well. Probably float franchisee tenders to the existing franchisees and see who's interested in a women's team. Maybe RCB, maybe Chennai Super Kings. But I think what's the major development is the sponsorship. At the end of the day, whether it's men's cricket or women's cricket, it's about the selling factor. And the fact that the BCCI brought out a tender for sponsorship separately, and they've got a principal sponsor. You have Dream 11 sponsoring the men's IPL, but you have Jio, which is now the principal sponsor of the women's challenge, T20 challenge, and potentially the women's IPL when it becomes that. I think that's very telling, because when you have separate sponsors or principal sponsors, because the other sponsors are still on board, when you have the principal sponsors, it shows that women's game is now starting to sell in India, which is, I think, really, really important.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Like you said, even this podcast wouldn't survive without sponsors. So we all need sponsors.
Sponsors plug in.
Yeah, see, it's not just my work and my website that I plug here. But the thing is, you're right. Women's cricket has generated interest in the last few years, and it is really growing rapidly. I'm sure it's Indian women's cricket has a long way to go to catch up with Australian women's cricket. And I'm not talking about what happens on the field, but off the field in terms of promotion and marketing. But it's getting there now that they have a leading sponsor. And the only place I differ from you in terms of how the IPL or the women's IPL, whenever it happens, should be brought together is, I still think it has to be held. This was a crazy year. I don't think anybody can. Yes, I mean, 3 or 4 Indian girls have missed out on coming and playing in the WBBL. But then you compare that to so many other young talented players getting an opportunity now to showcase their talents on TV in the UAE. It's I mean, there is no winner there. You have to pick one of the two, and you can be pulled up for either. But I still feel, rather than going to the franchises and having a franchise system for the women's IPL, maybe the WBBL is a format that the BCCI could try, where they own the teams, or they come up with 6 teams like they have here with the Women's T20 Challenge. Yeah. Maybe you don't need 8 teams to start with. Have 6 teams. And then maybe just find administrators from within women's cricket to run each team. That way, you're not only you don't just have a tournament, but you're also developing women's cricket administrators and bringing more women into the system, which I think would be a great idea, and which might happen, especially after they listen to this podcast and they steal my idea.
It's always good to listen to Bharat Sundaresan's ideas, isn't it? Well, fantastic that one, Bharat, once again. And we hope, and I think the consensus is building, not just hope anymore, whether it's the broadcasters, whether it's the fans, whether it's, more importantly, the sponsors who put the money on the table. The consensus is building towards a full-fledged women's IPL, whether it's 6 teams, 5 teams, 8 teams, depends on the player pool, depends on when you want to host it. Do you want to clash it with the men's IPL, or do you want to play it, perhaps later in the year? And again, a lot of factors, whether the next IPL is going to happen in India or not. So a few factors still to be sorted out, but maybe 21, if not 21, then definitely 2022. We are hurtling towards a women's IPL, or whatever you want to call it, the women's T20 Challenger, as long as there is a women's competition. Women's cricket has arrived in India and it's here to stay. That brings us to the end of this podcast. We've talked IPL, we've talked knockouts, we've talked women's cricket. Bharat, anything that we have missed out?
Yeah, we still haven't spoken about the election results. Have you checked Trump who's ahead in Georgia?
Georgia. Yeah, they had the very, very minuscule lead in Georgia. Yes. It's still the same. Joe Biden takes a slender lead in Georgia, and he is closing in on the presidency. It's going down to the wire, as one Ravi Shastri would say. That's the end of this episode. And as always, share your feedback and share it on social media. It's available on all regular platforms, Apple Podcasts, Apple iTunes, in fact, Spotify, JioSaavn, Google Podcasts, and as also on YouTube. Until next time then, and hopefully we will be joined by Deep Das Gupta once again after the IPL. Until next time, it's goodbye.
Dhoni finishes off in style. A magnificent strike into the crowd. India lift the World Cup after 28 years.